How's it going, my friends? John the Basic Expert here, and in today's video we're going to talk about the making of original Dungeons & Dragons. This was sent as a gift from me, from a viewer, of channel supporter Thothamon. Thank you, Thothamon, for sending me this. I'm finally getting around to talking about this. And this is probably going to be, as you can see how fat this is, there's a lot of things that I want to talk about that I read in this book and have been reading in this book that I want to share with you guys that I find interesting. So this here, given my channel and the things that I like to talk about, is like a smorgasbord of content that I can share with you guys and give my opinions on and whatnot. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, and you're glad I'm going to be talking about this kind of stuff, thank Thothamon, who sent me the book as a gift. Very, very generous of him, and I'm very grateful to supporters like him and everyone else that supports the channel and allows us to pay for, like Vic and I, to pay for StreamYard so we can stream on Wednesdays, and making this into something that I can do more and more and devote more and more time to. That means a whole lot. So if you like this kind of content and you want to support the channel, you can do so on my Guilded server, on my Subscribe Star, or right here on YouTube. Links to all that stuff is in the pinned comment below. You can see all that on my Substack, which is my blog that I use, and you can check out my my blog there. It has links to the Guilded and Subscribe Star and all that kind of stuff. I just try and put everything in one place where you guys can easily find all the ways you want to know more about what I'm doing and talking about and the things I'm making. If you're interested in that, links all there. So without further ado, let's get into this book here. A lot of people were upset when this book came out, and I think they're still upset about it. And I think there's good reason to be upset about this book. I haven't really talked about the culture war stuff, mostly because I find it boring at this point. It's very tiresome. I think there's only so many, Danger Hair Meltdown videos that you can watch or anything like that. It's just whatever. I don't care. I just want to play Elf game and have a good time. And that other stuff doesn't interest me anymore. It hasn't interested me in a year or so, a couple years. It just gets tiresome, right? I think a lot of us get into it and we're like, I'm going to fight for this thing I love. And then you sort of realize that the best way to fight for the hobby, the thing that you're defending and you love, is to just make cool stuff in it, which I'm trying to do. And a lot of my friends in our circle of friends are trying to do, is just, can we make cool stuff? We don't need to have this culture war brain rot going on all the time in this. No offense to people that maybe want to talk about that stuff. I mean, I get that there's an audience for it, but it's just not for me anymore. But I get why people are upset about this book, given the preface and the introduction. And so I just kind of want to read the offending parts to you guys, and we'll get that part out of the way. So in the preface, it's by Jason Tondro. He says, "Some language in the first iteration of D&D presents a moral quandary. The documents reproduced in this book include many pages of charts and tables alongside lists of monsters, spells, and magic items, but the game content also includes a virtual catalog of insensitive and derogatory language, words that are casually hurtful to anyone with a physical or mental disability, or who happens to be old, fat, not conventionally attractive, indigenous, black, or a woman. Some people have charitably ascribed this language to the authors working from bad assumptions. In the 1970s, historical wargamers in America were predominantly white middle-class men. It isn't surprising that they would dub a class of soldiers the Fighting Man. Fun fact about Fighting Man, actually, I've been reading, I read my Bible every day, and the Fighting Man is actually mentioned that as a term. I see that in my Orthodox study Bible. So I want to just say that term is generally older than even what Gary is using here. That he didn't make it up, and from what I understand, it's also a term used in Edgar Rice Burroughs' stories to describe soldiers. It's a pretty common term, so being bent out of shape about that term is, you got to be mad at all of history, which I get that some of these people generally are. But when in the pages of Greyhawk, the description of the Queen of Chaotic Dragons includes a dig at women's lib, the misogyny is revealed as a conscious choice. It's an unfortunate fact that women seldom appear in original D&D, and when they do, they're usually portrayed disrespectfully. Slavery appears in original D&D not as a human tragedy that devastated generations over centuries, but as a simple commercial transaction. The cultural appropriation of original D&D ranges from the bewildering, like naming every 6th level clerical llama, to The staggering gods, demigods, and heroes, not reprinted in this book, includes game statistics for sacred figures revered by more than 1 billion people around the world, where players expected to fight Vishnu, one of the principal deities of Hinduism, kill him, and loot his +3 sword of demon slaying. I don't know, that sounds pretty sick to me. And if you're going to be mad at that, that's like literally the plot of every Japanese role-playing game ever. So we have to be mad at the Japanese. Then too, because God is always the main villain in those stories. In the foreword by John Peterson, he says, note that rules for fantastic medieval wargame campaigns that make up original D&D were created by and sold to a wargaming community that was almost exclusively white middle-class men. The rules compiled here offer little by way of rules for other players, nor indeed for anyone who wouldn't easily identify with a pulp, sword, and sorcery hero. Especially before 1974, the rules made light of slavery in addition to including other harmful content. To reiterate the disclaimer, Wizards of the Coast includes on legacy D&D content. These depictions were wrong then and are wrong today. The content is presented as it was originally created, because to do otherwise would be the same as claiming these prejudices never existed. So I just find that this is all just completely unnecessary in this, and I get why Wizards is doing it. They still think that doing this kind of stuff, we see it in the 2024 books that are coming out, that this is something that people want overall. And I think if you talk to the general person in the hobby, they're not particularly interested in it. I'm not really interested in it. I have a player in my in-person group who started in 5e. He was completely unaware of any of the culture war stuff, which I was very envious of when I was talking to him. And then I and another friend in the group actually spoiled that innocence for him as he became more aware of it and what Wizards of the Coast was doing. And I think that goes to show there's this big split between what Wizards of the Coast thinks the community of gamers, the community, I hate that term, but what gamers want and what people actually want. What people actually want is they want fighting men, they want adventure, they want to kill monsters and take their stuff, they want to fight against evil deities. I appreciate that Wizards of the Coast isn't editing it, but I also think it's really weak to present this in the comments, and the backlash I think against this is deserved. I think a lot of these guys are still alive, a lot of the guys in this book that have their names in here, they're still alive, and then you're going to put this sort of language over them and profit. You're selling this book and you're profiting off of what these men made, but you're going to condemn them at the same time. And again, many of these men are alive, and those that are dead, like Gygax, or those who have passed, like Gygax or Arneson, their families are still alive. And I'm sure the Gygax family loves hearing about how their grandfather was a misogynist and a racist, and all those sorts of lovely ists and phobes that they hear constantly being leveled at by the company that has the rights to the game. So I thoroughly condemn the introduction to this book. I think that it's disgusting, and I think that if you think such introductions are a good thing, you and I are not going to get along. You should probably not even subscribe to my channel, because we're generally not going to get along, because here at this channel, we're not afraid to look at games as they are, look at the hobby as it is and was, and just take it as it is, not worry about it. Like, we don't let these things bother you. It's literally words in a book, and they shouldn't hurt you. So that said, I'm not too worked up about it, because I do think the rest of this book is actually really, really good, and it's just sort of a shame, and I think disingenuous and dishonest and not fair to sort of speak ill of some people that have passed and some people that are still alive within the hobby, that are the giants and titans within the hobby, and to have this sort of at the beginning of the book as people open it up. But I am so far glad to say that I don't really see anything within it, the actual content of the book, that is bad in that regard, right? I haven't seen anything commentating on in the actual content of the book itself that is of that level. So that's good. I'm glad that WotC at least knows their place, in that we should stick this at the front, and they probably know that the people that buy this book except for weirdos like me, are actually probably not going to read this. So the activists that originally like to support WotC and like that kind of stuff, they just flip to the first few pages. They see that WotC's bending the knee, and then they keep moving on, leave WotC alone, and then the rest of the book is just like a normal historical book about D&D, you know? So I think if you can get past that point and you can suck it up and give WotC money, or if you can find this on the secondary market, you might... It still, I think, might be worth having, aside from these sort of, I think, heinous remarks made against titans within the industry, originators within the industry. So within the book, you know, I'm going to just cover a few points. Won't make this video extra long, but a few points that are within this book that we can cover. Interesting things is, you know, one of the first things it talks about is how Gary... in the precursors, there's a precursor section, talks about great worms. And there was a Thangorodrim, Volume 1, Number 2, in which Gary started writing articles about dragons and different kinds of dragons, black dragons, green dragons, you know, red dragons, their various abilities and things like that. We get sort of this precursor to a monster manual, and it's quite interesting and neat, in my opinion. And, you know, it's interesting, too, that Gary seemed to have actually played, I believe, in the sort of... It was like a... not quite like a Bronstein game like we've talked about before on this channel, but a diplomacy game that was being ran in Middle-earth. People are taking different things. And honestly, it kind of seems kind of silly as you read some of this stuff. Gygax appears to have been Gondor, and they're doing like wild stuff that probably would make J.R.'s Tolkien roll over in his grave. Like, I think I read something in here where, here you go. So here's the press here. It says, in Mordor, horror of horrors, our supreme Lord Sauron was chased willy-nilly throughout his mountain citadel last night by enemy commandos equipped with flamethrowers. Fortunately, outside of the loss of the ring of adamant and 1,000 orc guards, only the Dark Lord's pride was hurt. Discount singed undies. Call back the armies and defend our leader. These raids must be stopped now. So, you know, like I said, we're seeing wild... To me, for those of you that are Bro-SR guys that kind of watch the channel, it sounds like some of the silly things you guys do that I hear you guys are doing in your campaigns. So I guess, you know, some people maybe need to apologize to some of you guys about what you guys do, because it seems kind of on point with the sort of silliness that Gygax and his friends are doing within their games at the time. So it has lots of other things like the Egg of Coot. Gygax wrote an article in Domesday Book 4, 4 to 5, 1970. So this is in 1970. And he had kind of photocopied some encyclopedia entries from an old, like early 1900s encyclopedia that was probably in the public domain by that point, and wrote about different weapons, how to use them. It's all pretty interesting, I think. It just shows, in my opinion, I think, the polearms in it, for example. You kind of get to the point of why Gygax loved polearms so much, and we kind of see the polearm autism in the strategic review issues and later in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition. I think we get a taste of that as well. So, and then it goes into a early draft version of, or not an early draft version, but the fantasy section. We'll get to the early draft version of original Dungeons & Dragons, which is presented in this book, which is really cool. So we'll tease that later. But there is chainmail in here, or at least part of chainmail. I don't think within this book there's enough of chainmail for you to actually use it. For instance, how I've implemented chainmail into Whitebox, my 0E clone. But there's enough here to make you interested in it, and you might be able to draw some ideas from it, but you won't be able to play chainmail from what's in this book. Again, it's just the fantasy supplement, and then some of the tables that are in the back of the book. But it's all pretty interesting in that it, you know, you kind of start to see. I think it's important to see the wargame roots of this, and that goes to like a later section in the book where you know, let's go to the later section of the book. There's in this section some correspondence between Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, and I think it's interesting to read how Arneson was using chainmail to run his Blackmoor campaign, which is the progenerator of original Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not going to claim, and I'm not going to make the claim, and I've never made the claim that, for instance, the way I run Zero E or my white box game, my white box clone, is like the definitive way to play the game. It's just my way. I've said from the beginning that white box, for example, was me sort of looking at if I had received the three LBBs, the three little brown books of Zero E, 1974 D&D, and I had a copy of Chainmail, how would I run the game? So these are already like edited, released things that would have been available to the public in the mid-70s. How would I run this game? That was my goal with it. This has stuff that is like pre that, and so obviously the game is going to be different as they played, tested, did all these sorts of things. This is going to be different. And I do think it's interesting, and there's probably some elements you could derive from this to know what they were doing and how they were doing it, even if you are using the things that were edited and later released to the public. But anyways, Arneson says, as to chainmail modifications, they were fairly minor, and the big change was laying out the dungeon for exploration and the like, combined with a maze which you have to map as you go along, thus offering the possibility of getting lost. Also, we are using Avalon Hill's outdoor survival board as a surface obstacle course for reaching a variety of destinations. The wilderness encounter aspect was modified to mean that you met various creatures which you then have to hack your way through. There's also the chance that you will die of thirst or hunger, now ignoble, while wandering around lost. Wizards do not take part, since it's too easy for them to stay alive and not get lost. But the heroes and superheroes, and it's funny, it just goes to show Arneson was not very good at writing, and I think in some respect, because there's some typos here. But I have typos in my stuff all the time, so I'm not throwing shade. I'm just, it's comforting for me to see these titans and giants misspell words. It makes me feel like my stupidity is, normal. Stay alive and not get lost, but the heroes and superheroes have fun. On the combat table, we modified it so that various creatures can take more than one hit to allow less runs of luck and reflect minor damage. The person might take during combat or just traveling. This allows a sadistic referee to stretch out the length and variety of a person's demise. The Balrog burned your right leg and has thus inflicted 4 hits and cut movement by 40%. The trail of blood has been picked up by a pack of werewolves, which are getting closer. What do you do now? So our modifications are fairly minor, and it's the imagination of the ref that adds to the real spice. If you want, I can send along some of the chance tables, so if you want them, let me know, okay? So I thought that this little correspondence was very interesting. It's at the end of the section, and I think that'll cover the main section. I want to leave some things for maybe future videos or topics. There's lots of other cool stuff in here, like maps of Blackmoor, points of interest, things like that. And like a character sheet that we can see from Arneson's play group of the Wizard Gaylord, who is... it's really interesting. It doesn't look like a character sheet we would expect, or even have used in 1974 in the 3 LBBs. But, you definitely see the sort of beginnings of what this would be and what they're doing. And I think that Arneson's talking about how they implemented chainmail, and then we can kind of see the progeneration, the seeding of the idea of what this game is about. That overland travel matters. They're managing resources. They are managing food and water. They are getting lost. They're having random encounters in the wilderness. So just getting to the dungeon itself is an adventure in and of itself until they actually arrive in the dungeon. So I think that that's pretty interesting and cool. And I think that'll do it for this video. As we talk more about this, we'll talk more about stuff in future videos as I have time to make these. If you like this kind of content, again, like, subscribe, share the video, support the channel if you want to as well. I also want to talk about, one second. I have an update on Atomic Punk. So we can see here, I got my hard copy of it here. This is from Lulu. The Lulu print always looks pretty good. You can see you find an interesting page that really kind of shows it off. You can see it looks pretty good. you know, it turned out pretty great. Aside from the fact that, I don't know if you can see on camera here, there's a box around Atomic Punk up here, and I screwed up the color. I screwed up the color profile for the interior file, and so everything has a box around it that has a transparency that I painted. Did all the art myself. And so the problem then is everything has that, and it just bothers me, and I don't want people to buy a book that has weird imperfections that I might be able to fix. So while I do have this, it's very close to being released. I'm hoping maybe the Drive-Thru-RPG copy will not have this problem. It probably won't. So maybe Drive-Thru-RPG, which is currently being printed and shipped right now, maybe that one will be good to go. I can, green light that one, and you guys, if you want a physical copy, you can get it from there. The Lulu quality is always better. I get less of a margin on the Lulu, so I don't mind either way where you buy it. If you buy it from Lulu or you buy it from Drive-Thru-RPG, I'm just glad that you're buying my stuff and hopefully enjoying it. But hard copy should be coming soon. I know people are looking forward to these. They're coming. I'm working on it. I just got to fix these issues. This is just part of the problem of being a solo, do every single thing yourself creator within this hobby, within this sphere. It's you run into things. You're trying to learn new things. It's a whole deal. It's a problem. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sound off in the comments below about what you think about the making of D&D book. If you have a copy, I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments below. More videos about this book are going to come because I love 0E. I love 1974 D&D. And so having a book about it that sort of goes into the history of it and has things in it, I mean, despite the preface and the introduction with how egregious they are, it has really interesting stuff in it that really gets me excited about 0E. And so I'm looking forward to talking more about these topics with you guys. So more videos to come on this book. Until next time, though, guys, peace out. I'll talk to you later.